Welp, they finally did it. Good things are coming, or so we thought. Recently, Wizards of the Coast announced the rebalancing of cards for Historic along with other Arena news. Link in the description. What changed? What impact will it have on the format? How will the meta shift? While also discussing options on the future of Historic as a format moving forward. Let's get into it. First up, we have Galvanic Discharge. Not so static anymore, energy generation has been nerfed from 3 energy to 2 energy. Discharge was the premier red removal spell in Historic due to its very high floor while having potential as a 1-mana murder spell later in the game. This nerf felt unnecessary as red has multiple 3 damage removal spells, but considering it could be the second coming of Unholy Heat, so I can see why this took a hit. Being able to scale into the game without having to use up more slots in your deck is why this always got the start over many other premier removal spells in the format. I don't think this change makes Discharge unplayable, however this hinders the early game and now you cannot just whimsically run 4 of these. This also might open up other archetypes pushed out due to the ubiquity of Discharge, but we'll have to wait and see. Second, we have Guide of Souls. Guide got slightly worse at their job, and now needs 4 energy instead of 3 to pay for the triggering cost. Apparently not even fictional characters are immune from economic inflation. Of all the changes we will see from this announcement, this seems like the most tame. 4 is not that much different from 3, and the main draw to Guide is more about the energy production than the aggressive slant, which is still relevant. In other words, the second part of Guide's text was icing on the soul that just made it strictly better than other Soul-Worn type cards. Guide is still powerful, Guide is still playable, Guide will still be in most aggressive energy strats, this nerf does not affect it that much. Lastly, but certainly not least, Oscillate Pride. Our powerful 1-drop has been heavily nerfed to being now a 2-drop instead of a 1. Yes, the cost is now 1 white, 1 colorless. On one hand, I'm totally fine with this due to the snowball effect that Pride can make. On the other, was this really necessary? Those who played Historic know how Pride, while annoying, is very beatable, and if prepared, you know what to do and expect and plan for it. Does Pride really recover? It is too early to tell, but this change was way more impactful than any other change, because now you have to have 1 more 2-drop added to the sea of 2-drops that you already have. The energy deck got nerfed. That's the good news. The bad news? That's all that was touched. Now you might be thinking, were there any cards that could have seen a change, an unban, or a revert? We'll get to the Historic's identity in a second, but first we must discuss the lack of one specific change, and that change is Ajani Nakado Pariah. How this escaped without a scratch on it is mystifying to say the least. I understand the reflexes kitties have, but the amount of damage this little shit up to it long ago. In my opinion, Ajani was the most egregious from the Boros energy deck. Being able to flip on demand very quickly with bombardment was not the intention, as this allows Ajani to flip, tag something with damage, and make another little kitty. Highly efficient, difficult to interact with, and not bad in multiples. The previous 3 cards we discussed do not fit these same criteria as Ajani does. While one can make the argument that any of the previous cards discussed deserve to be nerfed, not having Ajani in the same discussion is missing the point of why the deck was so good in the first place. I was asked how I would change Ajani, and one of 2 ways I came up with either is just to increase the cost to 3, or have the text change where the flip effect is checked at end of turn, post combat, or whenever, just not immediately to dodge removal and give a window of opportunity. If you're not going to nerf the real reason for the major successes of the deck, is it possible we could have seen power equally distributed instead of powering down the format? Which brings us to the future of Historic. I am on record as saying, as someone who was a huge fan of Historic since its inception, I have virtually no idea what the direction of Historic is now. The TLDR is that Historic is a highly random, variable format that has no standard operating procedural system of what defines what Historic is, nor does it have an identity outside of power down timeless. An example of this is nerfing Oscillate Pride, but having Ragavan still banned. Calm down, I'm not saying to unban Ragavan. What I am saying is that to have consistency all around, especially since the whole purpose of the nerfs and buffs system is not have cards banned outside of the busted ones. Whether you claim it to be fine as is, the exponential power increases in the last year have outmoded much of the nerfs and bans that could have been ended tomorrow. Here are some of the things I would do, not an exhaustive list, but could have redistributed power to other archetypes to give more variety to the format. One easy change is just reverting much of the nerfs that you already have. Here are some, but are not limited to, some of my favorites. Omnath, Locus of Creation, Fires of Invention, Crucius, Dragon Rage's Channeler, and my personal favorite, Cauldron Familiar, could be reverted and open the format. Now obviously the nerf list is very long, but you do not need to do it all at once. Just a couple at a time in a consistent way. The digital space is literally why you have created the formats that have constant churn with constant updates and balance changes in the first place. For example, the best way to accomplish this is by making changes with every seasonal change to give any deck a chance for redemption. If you do not want to change it that often, which it seems WotC doesn't want to do anyway, I think ladder changes are in order, but that is not the scope of this video specifically. Speaking of other changes, what about unbans? Look, I understand very well how bad it looks if you unban a card only to reban it later. Yeah, I see you over there, Golgari Grave Troll. However, some cards just make no sense to still be banned. Agent of Treachery, Spreading Seas, and Wilderness Reclamation, just to name a few, were banned for a reason that is just not so much of a reason anymore. Much like with the nerfs, the format has absorbed that power now. However, I could not leave you without making a hot take to push a discussion, and that is about Uro. I will totally understand if you just click off the video now because I have invoked the unholy. However, hear me out. In my opinion, the mere existence of Flage should at the very least allow the discussion of Uro being allowed to compete. My argument? They do virtually the same thing at 3 mana, except one gives you mana and the other gives you removal. Other decks should be allowed to compete, not just Boros or Martyr Energy from the aggro or mid-range space. The contention or counter to my argument is that you just make aggro decks unplayable. However, I have a rebuttal. Wizards, the best deck prior to Energy, reigned for more than a year and still finds ways to win the game. Energy at the time was just a better Wizards deck, at least until the changes. Discharge losing the ability to automatically hit for 3 damage on first cast might bring Wizards back. Uro doesn't really change that Wizards trajectory, as I have personally from an empty board died in 1 to 2 turns from over 20 life past turn 4. What do you think about the historic changes? Comment on what you would do if you were the arena team assigned to the historic format management for a day. Well, that is going to be it for this video. Let me know in the comments below what you think about the format, how the meta will shift, and the state of historic. If you made it this far into the video, I appreciate you. If you like the content like this and more, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, as this helps our channel and community grow. See you in the next video.